Hello, and welcome to the Family Histories Podcast, a show for and about those of us who are sat quietly in libraries, archives, and spare rooms all around the world, tirelessly piecing together our collective social and family history. My name is Andrew Martin, I'm a family historian, and I'll be your host. In this episode, The Homesick, we'll be hearing about a man who left his family behind in England and began a new life in Australia. And we'll be on the hunt for the origins of a captain with multiple names. So, put down that old parish baptism register, grab a cuppa, and let's meet our guest. I'm joined today by an Australian family historian who has been researching her family history for decades and blogging extensively along the way. Her love for family history and history more broadly has also led her to conduct a one-place study in Wales. So, before she gets bored and heads off to Pembrokeshire, I should introduce my guest. It's Jennifer Jones. Hello, Jennifer. Welcome to the Family Histories Podcast.
Hello, Andrew. Thank you for inviting me along.
It's an absolute pleasure to have you here today. Now, as usual, we start with the same question, and that is, how did you get interested in researching your family history?
So an aunt of my husband's about 40 years ago, when I was a young mum with young children and no interest in family history, invited me to help her out with a family reunion. At the time, I was quite happy to help her out, but I was a bit concerned because she was that aunt that everyone ran and hid from at family events.
Oh, okay.
Because she had done extensive research and published a book and was always interested to have someone to tell about it. So after I got over that, we did the reunion. It all went well. It was great. And she then sent me along my merry way to learn how to research my family. And she gave me a copy of Family Tree Maker and told me to go, all she told me was start with yourself and go backwards. You'll work it out.
Right, okay.
So I went along and did that and thought I would just do a little bit of half an hour maybe to show her that I had done something because I had no interest.
Right.
Until I spoke to Dad. So my dad was an orphan, which I did know at the time, but I knew nothing about why he was an orphan, what happened to his parents. It was just never discussed, not for any reason. It just was never discussed in the family. We all just knew Dad was an orphan.
Sure, okay.
So the first thing I did, I went along to the births, deaths and marriages registry. All I knew was I had to get death certificates for them. So I found that Dad's father died and 6 weeks later his mum died.
Right.
Separate reasons. And his mother was in hospital for about a month before she died. So when I looked at the certificate and found there were 11 children, I was just horrified at the thought, and I was a young mum at the time, what it must have been like for her to have been in that position wondering what's going to happen to her children.
Wow, that must have been dreadful.
Yeah. So that made me realise there was a story behind gathering dates and names, and because that's all I ever thought it was. Yeah. So that's how I got along that path.
So all of the information that your aunt gave you, have you since kind of gone back and verified stuff and was she accurate in her research?
Well, she was actually my husband's aunt.
Oh, okay.
So that was my husband's family. So I was starting from scratch, from knowing absolutely nothing.
I see, yeah.
But there was a cousin who I didn't know, who mum had said to me, you should phone Myrna because she knows everything about your father's family. Mm-hmm. And she was quite a bit older than me anyway. So we touched base and we've been great friends ever since, and she really helped me out in those early days, got me started.
What was it like to discover those, I think you said 10 siblings? Were they aware of the rest of the family? Had the family been broken up? Because that's a very large family to try and care for.
Yeah. No, they weren't. Dad had, when his parents died, they were aged, there was a 3-year-old up to, I think, a 20-year-old. And in that, they were all made wards of the state.
Okay.
And in those days, the older brother said he would look after them. So it was just, okay, off you go.
That's quite a task. Okay.
Can't imagine it these days, can you?
No.
So they weren't sent to an orphanage. They were just left to their own devices.
Okay. Yeah.
They were very close, Dad and his brothers, right along to adulthood. And I've got vague memories of the odd brother calling into home. They all just lost touch, but Dad knew them, well.
Wow. And did they and your dad know kind of beyond their parents to their kind of grandparents and wider family?
I was quite surprised because I found out from the death certificate his mother's name and maiden name, and I just assumed he wouldn't know that. And I told him, and he said, yes, well, tell me something I don't know. Because I'd asked him, what does he know? And he said nothing. So, yes, he knew that. That's all he knew. He didn't know any more than that. And he knew they came from Wales. So he knew nothing more than that, yeah.
So what's it like for you to, in effect, research from afar?
Researching Wales has been a little bit tricky.
Okay.
Which is why I started the one place study. So my family over there, they were just ordinary working people before they came out to Australia.
Yeah.
And there was no reason for them to be in newspapers or archives or anything. So I started the one place study to try to learn more about where they came from and the people around them in the city they came from. Other than that, it's been difficult to find anything about them at all.
And this place is Haverfordwest, I think, in Pembrokeshire.
Yes, that's right.
What really made you want to start researching a one-place study as well as a family history?
Yeah, I know. It's silly, isn't it?
Well, I don't know. You tell me.
It's a lot of... No, my main reason, I had been to Haverfordwest we were on a bike riding tour over there with my daughter.
Okay.
And it rained the whole time and we didn't have any spare clothes with us or we were just riding. We weren't on any research trip or anything like that. So I'd been there and felt like I had roots there, which I know it seems silly, but...
No.
And when I walked around the town, I noticed that all the men looked similar to my dad.
Okay.
Just not like him, but just the similar type of build and hair and, Yeah. So I've always been interested in the city since then. But I came to a full stop with what I could find out about my great-great-grandparents and their early lives. So that's why I thought I would just dive into the one-place study and learn as much as I can about the way people lived there then.
I guess that competes maybe a little bit with your time. Do you find yourself going, I want to do the one-place study, but, hang on, who's this? Who's this relative?
Yeah, it does. I fight in my brain between the one-place study, the research, the blogging.
Yeah.
It's all time-consuming, but it's fun.
Yeah.
It's all fun.
So what motivates you to do blogging, which is quite a nice segue there. So what motivates you and keeps you blogging?
I started just because I don't know why I started. It just seemed a good thing to do, like 12 years ago.
Sure.
And then as the years went by, I realised that there is nobody coming after me to take over the work I've done. So when I'm gone, I don't know what's going to happen to all those papers in my cupboard and all the research.
Okay.
So I decided to start telling the family stories as a way of, and I put files up there, certificates, and so they're there for if anyone happens to come along who might be interested in the family after me, hopefully they will come across my blog.
Nice. So you've been researching for some time. How has that changed for you?
Oh, it's changed so much because I live in central Victoria, which is 2 hours from Melbourne, which is our main research centre that I would go to.
Yeah.
So, I've always worked. So it was always difficult to find a time. It was always on days off and holidays. And so it was a long process researching back then. And, we'd order microfiche from Salt Lake City. And back in those days, there was nothing online when I started at all. So it was all a matter of rocking up and having a look at the record, which was a good grounding.
Yes.
It's a really good grounding for research, for understanding research, but it's much easier today.
I think I caught probably the tail end of that process because I am familiar with microfiche and microfilm and going to the archive and writing copious notes in pencil and copying them from transcripts or original documents and doing that, which is obviously still an activity.
Yeah.
But I also then started to see the collections being digitized and being available online, which for me has changed it. So, I mean, it certainly changed it for you as well.
Yeah, no, it's amazing. I used to go to the State Library in Melbourne and I'd get out microfilm and you just had to go through, roll after roll after roll to find that one little snippet of information you were after. It's just so great now to be able to just look anything up that you want. There's pitfalls, of course, but, be careful. Yeah.
Yeah. What do you think the genealogy industry or perhaps the genealogy community could do better?
I think they're going to have to, times are changing and I don't think young people are going to want to go to meetings.
Okay.
And if they do go to meetings, there'll have to be something to drag them along to get them there.
Sure. What sort of meetings do you mean?
Well, I'm talking about, genealogy meetings, family history meetings, that type of thing.
Yep.
Because you probably noticed too, we're all getting older at these meetings. There's not that many younger ones coming along. And the young people I know, they do everything online. So I think that will have to change because, it's been great since the pandemic, the amount of things we can do online now. It's just awesome. But not everything on. So I think that's going to have to be a big change.
Yeah. And I guess maybe for younger people, they're perhaps kind of money short, time rich, or maybe not actually that time rich at all. So I guess because they can go online and maybe they participate when they have time via a Facebook group and they're discussing there, that perhaps is as much as that they can give right now. It gives them the exposure to the contents kind of briefly, a kind of a low commitment, and they can just dip in and dip out and they see it in their Facebook feed or something like that, or Instagram or something. And they can see it there whilst they're doing other stuff because they are busy or they can't travel to somewhere to be somewhere at a certain time, or they can't afford to do that. So I guess it's kind of trying to find a good spot in amongst all of that to try and grow attendance amongst perhaps younger people or new researchers going to those types of meetings or kind of evolving those meetings into something slightly different.
I agree. I think it's hooking them in. So as they've got, even if it's like, as you said, a snippet of interest, just enough to keep them, interested enough to pop in every now and then and, maybe they might do a half-hour bit of research here or there, but then down the track, they might have more time up their sleeve, and it might be just something that they revisit. So
yeah, they'll come back. Yeah,
it would be disappointing if family history is such a big industry now. When I first started, it wasn't as big as it is now, and wouldn't it be a shame if it sort of fizzled out a little bit?
Yeah, definitely. Particularly when it's just so addictive to do. So,
absolutely.
What's the one thing that you wish that you'd known before you started doing research?
Oh, right, that's a good one. I probably wish, it's a practical thing, I wish I'd known that I should do something with all those little bits of paper and information that I found back then and copied and didn't write sources on.
Oh, no.
And just threw in that drawer. And then, down the track you look at it and think, oh, what was that for? Where did that come from? I've got some good information there, but I really don't have what I need. So I wish I'd known that. And, files, I wish I had, when computers started and I was putting things on the computer, I wish I had put them in an organised fashion. And then I wouldn't have had to use the whole pandemic to get them into some sort of system.
I've certainly encountered things in my files and I look at them going, that is a wonderful piece of information. But where on earth did I get that?
Yes, That's it. and it's useless if you don't know where it came from.
Exactly. You don't know what the source is. So, and then you have to try and see if you can use maybe contemporary tools to try and find it again somewhere, and it doesn't always happen. So,
No. I do wish I had been interested earlier enough to speak to my grandfather. And I knew my great-grandfather until I was 17.
right. Okay.
So he died when I was 17. And I think, I was old enough that I could have asked him some great questions had I had any interest back then. So to turn back the clock, I would love to do that. Yeah.
Yeah, you are definitely not alone in that one. I would have
No.
asked so many questions. I knew many of my great grandparents. I was fortunate to be in that position, but I didn't ask any questions apart from to, I think, the last surviving one, who was brilliant at providing answers. But I feel like I've missed a big chunk of information that maybe doesn't even make it into public records. The things that bring kind of a bit more life and a bit more color to people's characters. I miss all of that because I just didn't ask.
That's what you need, the story behind all those dates. And I think people, as they get older, like to talk about that.
Yeah.
So had the questions been asked, we probably would have heard some great stories.
Yeah. What does family history mean to you?
Oh, gosh, it means everything to me. So I've been, during my whole, since I was 30, diving in and out and in different stages of my life. I had different chunks of time.
Yep.
There were, parts of I might go a year in a certain part of my life where I wouldn't have time to even look at it. But now I retired a year ago, so I'm really getting into it again now. And it really means so much to me because I never understood anything about where I came from.
Yep.
Even Mum's family, Mum didn't know anything about her family either. So, I grew up having three first cousins. Actually, I now know I have over 50 first cousins with all Dad's family. So, and I have met a lot of them.
Wow.
Yeah, so, it does mean a lot, really does mean a lot. And that's why I'm frantically trying to get all these family stories onto the blog so that they're there for someone else.
Yeah. Right at the beginning of this conversation, you mentioned about how you helped someone with a reunion. Do you think that maybe you're heading towards doing a reunion?
I'd say probably not, because I don't think there's anyone in my family interested.
Okay.
I really do. It sounds dreadful, doesn't it?
But you weren't interested. I think you said at the beginning, you just helped with the reunion. So you weren't interested back then.
No, I wasn't at all. And my children weren't, but I was only 30.
Yeah.
There were a lot of older people there that were interested. I don't see a lot of people in my family that I would say, I think they'll come. I don't think so. So I would say probably not.
Fair enough.
But you really only need to have that one or two people with it that pop up with an interest to spread the word around and get other people interested. That who knows? Yeah.
Yeah. And the last question for this section: what has your research taught you about yourself?
Oh, that's a tricky question, Andrew. I think I know I'm fairly resilient. I do know that. But when I first started researching, I knew nothing about, didn't even know how to turn a computer on. There was no computers.
Right.
So I'm quite confident now that I can, if something pops up and I don't know how to do it, I can work it out, like with the back end of the blog and things like that I never ever would have thought. As far as family, when I was younger, I was never that. Family was just there. Now I'm really, I know how important family is. And you look back, like my great-grandfather, the things that happened in his life, he was resilient. And I just think perhaps I got that gene from him, because I've had things over my life that have taken resilience.
Yeah.
And nothing much seems to faze me. And I think from what I've learned about him that he was quite similar to that.
Our research can uncover some fascinating family stories. Some of them great, some of them good, some of them, well, less good. So it's now that time in the show for my guest to pick one of the relatives that they've researched and share their life story. Okay, Jennifer, who are you going to introduce us to?
I'd like to introduce you to my great-great-grandfather, Thomas Waters.
Okay.
He was born in 1829 in Dunton, Bedfordshire.
Yeah, I know that English village too.
At the family farm Newtonbury, just outside Dunton. And he emigrated to Australia.
Wow, okay.
Yeah.
What led to all of that?
Well, this is a little bit of a mystery. So he worked on the farm, and then for some reason he left the farm and went to London and took over the licence of a hotel.
Okay.
Which he operated for 1 year. I think it was during that time or just before. He married Ruth, and then he gave up the licence of the hotel after a year and left England and came to Australia alone.
Alone, okay.
So I have no idea what happened there. I was always very close to my great aunt, and he is her grandfather, although she didn't know him, but her father told her stories.
Okay.
And it was always the story that he came out to Australia in disgrace, but we're not sure why. Whether that was because he left, the disgrace was he left his wife and came, or whether something to do with the hotel. Don't know.
Well, that's tantalising, for sure.
It is. I would love to know the full story on that one.
So what sort of date did he come over to Australia?
1852.
Okay.
And he came to Melbourne. And he went straight away to Strathalbyn in South Australia, which I'd sort of like to know why. It's a little bit out of the way place for him to choose. But anyway, he did, and he married there.
Okay. Well, you said that the first wife didn't go with him. So did she die, or did he still have a wife back in England?
He did. So I found her in a poor house.
Oh, okay.
Yes. So I'm imagining it's probably a very sad story. I don't know. But
yeah.
I did find her in a poor house. So, yes, he was married. But we have to remember divorce wasn't common back then.
No, it was quite hard to get a divorce. I think there was like a period of time after which it kind of your marriage was deemed null, sort of.
Yes, that's right. And I think the wealthy were able to get a divorce, but he wasn't wealthy. So he married there, and then they moved across to Victoria.
Wow. Did he have any children with his first wife?
No.
No, okay.
No.
And presumably he had children with his second wife instead.
Yes, a whole big tribe of them. I can't remember the number. I think there might have been 11.
Gosh.
Yeah.
And do you know if he was kind of taking himself away from England and kind of escaping all of that past, or was he keeping in touch at all?
He was keeping in touch, most definitely.
Right.
I was just researching one night, just mindlessly, in one of the archives, and it came up that there was letters there that he had written home to his family in England.
Oh, in the archive, okay.
Yep, off to Melbourne very quickly to get those letters. And I think there's about 8 of them.
Okay.
They've been written in the 1860s. He was probably here about 8 years when he started writing them, maybe a bit less. And, these letters are wonderful. They just tell everything about his life, about what things were like in Australia, the cost of things, the clothing that he had, about his church and school and just family life in general as his children.
Yep.
But the thing that comes through them is he seems like he's terribly homesick.
Oh.
Yeah, in every letter he asks them to write, and you can tell he gets the odd letter, but most times he says, I wrote to you and you haven't written back. Why haven't you written? And please write to me. I want to hear about what's happening at home. It's very sad to read it. So I think there's underlying something there.
Yeah. It
sounds to me, reading between the lines, that they don't want to be in contact with him. And, he's sending them portraits, and he had a thing about birds, and it was a thing in the 19th century. I don't know whether you've heard about it. They have stuffed birds in a glass case.
Taxidermy, yes.
And taxidermy. So he was getting birds together to send home to them, and he actually had some himself, and my mother can remember them. My great-grandfather had these birds in the lounge room in a glass case, and magpies, and Mum hated them. She just thought they were creepy.
Yes, yeah, they are a bit, yes.
Yeah. But yes, he was staying in contact, and he was writing, by the sound of it, every mail. But we haven't got all of those letters, but we've got about 8 that someone over in England held on to.
Yeah. I was curious as to, this is him writing letters and they're sat there in an archive in Melbourne.
Yes.
If he was writing home, how have the letters got back to Melbourne?
Now, that's what I wondered. So there's a researcher in England who is from a brother of my Thomas, or a sister, I can't remember, but anyway, from the family. He came out here to research Thomas.
Yep.
And did some research, and before he left to go home, he deposited them into copies into the archive, which is just wonderful to think someone would do that.
That is quite a stroke of luck,
Yeah.
that they had the foresight to do that.
Oh, absolutely. Yes, yeah.
Wow. Do you think that maybe his family pushed him away, or do you think he was escaping a situation and had to go over there and he didn't really want to go away so far? If you're saying that he's homesick, there seems to be some kind of regret there, but I'm not sure which way it's coming from.
I think maybe it started when he left the farm and went to London. I don't know.
Okay.
But you have to sort of think life was very tough in Australia in those days.
Yes.
You know, they were living in a tent with their children, and there were no comforts of home at all. So
yeah,
I could imagine, you know, they lived in a manor house at Dunton, which was probably quite comfortable for the times, I would think. So, yeah, and work was hard to get. When you did get work, it didn't last. You had these children you had to feed. So, yeah, I think life was fairly tough.
Yeah.
And I think he was fairly close to his brothers and sisters because he asks about them constantly. So it seems to me that he probably missed his family more than he expected to, perhaps.
Do you know if there's any copies of his letters from home to him? Are there just none, or are there a few?
No, there are a couple.
Okay.
Yeah. You can tell by his writing that he does receive the odd one.
So there is two-way communication. Okay.
Yeah. Not much, though. Not much. And there are, I think, 2 in the batch that I've got. And one tells about the death of his father, that he was devastated at that.
Yeah.
And there was another very short letter. There wasn't much information, and he was wanting information about home. So there may have been more letters that, you know, weren't sort of kept. But the way he writes, I mailed my letter to you and you would have got it by now, but I haven't heard anything. He sort of says that in almost every letter.
Yeah. Sounds like there's a desperation there to get news, and that he feels like he's missing out on something.
Yes.
Or feels like he's missing out on something.
And he wants to tell his family about his new family.
Yeah.
He talks about that quite often. You know, he's saving up to get a portrait done so that they can meet his wife and his family. So, yeah.
So he's trying to make contact, but from the tone of the 2 letters, or 2 short letters that you have read, they're obviously, the death of the father is going to affect the tone of the letter. But can you sense from the tone of the letter whether this is a letter that they feel that they've had to send, or whether it's a letter that maybe they don't really want to write to him?
I think they had to send it because he did get some money from the will.
Okay.
And in a lot of his letters, he wrote about how hard things were, you know, how hard it was to get work, how hard it was to feed his family. And I'd imagine they would think that money would be really good for him, you know.
Yeah.
So I don't know whether they wrote to him because they had to tell him that, or whether they thought, well, we need to tell him his father's died.
Almost like a procedure to it, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, and his brother died also during all these letters, and they wrote and told him that his brother had died in an accident. So, you know, maybe they didn't give him any good news.
No, and it sounds like he was desperate to give them his good news as to what was happening to him in his new life in Australia, and he just wasn't getting much back from home. So.
Pretty much one way, I think, yes.
Yeah, no, that's a shame. Do you know if he ever actually made it back to England to see his family?
No.
Okay.
No, he didn't.
Yeah. would have been horrifically expensive to do, but
Oh, yeah, well, not many did.
no.
And which just makes the decision to come out here even more massive, knowing that they probably won't see any of their family ever again.
No.
You know, you just think, imagine having to make a decision like that.
Yeah, but I have seen newspaper articles from around kind of 1850s, 1860s making this promise of, you go to Australia, you get this new life, this new start. So maybe he got into some kind of situation with his hotel and just thought, right, no, I'm going. Here's a chance. I'm going to take it. And his wife didn't want to go, or she was unable to go, or maybe they weren't on good terms and she stayed behind.
No, that's right. And about the time that he came over here was when the gold rush was starting.
Yeah, okay.
So I would imagine he was probably coming out to make his fortune, which makes it a little bit more of a mystery why he went to the town in South Australia, because it wasn't the town of Gold Rush.
Okay.
So whether he worked out once he got here that there wasn't much money to be made. There was for some people, but not for everyone.
Oh, dear. So what kind of became of him in later life?
So after he came to Victoria, he settled in the middle of the Gold Rush area at Kyneton, central Victoria. And, they had their children. And he moved probably today, about an hour, maybe an hour and a half away, and bought a farm. So it was possible then to get a grant to start a farm,
right?
Which he did. And I think he might have lived a fairly quiet life on his farm, and probably a good life, yes.
And are there many later letters from him or later pieces of evidence of his life?
No. There's no letter saying after he moved to the farm. So the letters all were when he was in Kyneton.
Right.
Yeah. So I don't know whether he wrote letters after that or...
Yeah, I was curious as to whether he felt happier about his life that he had established in Australia. But it sounds like...
Yes, I'd like to know that too.
Oh. Well, thank you, Jennifer, for telling us the life story of Thomas Waters. But I think it's now time for you to face
the brick wall.
It's so frustrating when your research hits a dead end. These brick walls can be as unwanted as they are unexpected, but they can also be as addictive as they are annoying to solve. Sometimes all it needs is a little nudge from someone else to bring it crashing down. So, with this in mind, it's time for my guest to share one of their brick walls in the hope that one of you, dear listeners, can help with a research clue or idea. So, Jennifer, how can we help?
So, my 3 times great-grandfather, Captain James McEwan, is my brick wall.
Okay.
I've stopped very quickly when researching him. All I know, I'm told he was born in Scotland. I have no evidence for that at all.
Okay.
I first met up with him in Jamaica, and he was military.
Oh, okay.
And it was his marriage where I first came across him. He had 3 children born in Jamaica, and the oldest of them is my 2nd times great-grandfather.
Right, okay.
I know everything about him, but I know very little about his father. So he married, he had the children, and then in 1832 he came to Australia, to Tasmania.
Yep.
And once again he disappeared. So I don't know whether he went to another state, though I have researched everywhere, or whether he, stayed for a while and then went back home. And it's made very difficult because of the spelling of his name.
Mm-hmm.
So it's McEwan or it's McQueen, spelled about 5 or 6 different ways.
Oh, okay.
Yes.
That's not helpful. What's the most consistent way that it's spelled?
Well, probably equally consistent is McEwan, MCEWAN, or McQueen, MCQUEEN.
Right, okay.
That's the most common way of spelling McQueen, but I've seen it spelled every way. So he writes his name, as McEwan.
Yeah.
But then his children, some are registered as McEwan, some are registered as McQueen.
Oh, okay.
So it's all over the place. So I don't know whether it was McEwan or McQueen in Scotland. but I don't even have a hint as to where to start looking for him because there are so many McEwans and McQueens in Scotland.
You say that he goes missing a couple of times, even when he goes missing when he's in Australia or Tasmania. Do you think that's related to him being a captain and being on kind of some kind of military maneuver, or?
No, because his military service finished while he was in Jamaica. And the shocking news that I came across, using today's values, was that he was a slave owner in Jamaica.
Oh, no.
Yep. And he wasn't in the military then. So I don't really know anything, but I know the name of his slave, but I don't know much about that. After that, first thing I know is he was coming over here in 1832.
Yeah.
So there's a bit of a story around that to look into.
When you realised this, that he had owned slaves, how did that feel when you saw that evidence?
Well, it just hit me in the face.
Yeah.
It just came up as a record, as a hint in Ancestry. And, a lot of those hints are a lot of them are.
Yes, yeah. Quite creative, yeah.
Yes. So when it came up that it was a slave register, I just thought, I'll just have a bit of a look at this, but it won't be anything. And it was obviously him. So, yes, he only had one slave. It really did hit me in the face. And I don't know whether did he have a plantation? Because I think of a slave owner as being a plantation owner. He might have had a small plot of land. He only had one slave.
Yeah.
There's more to look into that, I think.
Do you know when James was born approximately? Do you have any idea of a date?
About 1796.
Okay. And possibly Scotland?
Yes, possibly Scotland.
You said that he was married in Jamaica. What kind of year was that?
That was in 1825. Susanna Jackson was his wife.
Okay.
He was in the 33rd Regiment of Foot, which later became the Duke of Wellington's regiment.
Yeah, so we've got quite a nice piece of information about him there, but you're wanting to find what's his origin, who are his parents?
Yeah, I'm thinking that perhaps in his military record there could be information about
like a next of kin.
Yeah. Well, I can't access them from here. I mean, I can if I spend a lot of money on updating my ancestry, which I will do one day if I don't find him. But yes, so.
Well, we do have listeners currently in about 115 different countries. So hopefully one of them can pop the lid on this and have a little look and see if they can spot him.
Yes, wouldn't that be great?
It would be. So what do you think is the best way for listeners to contact you if they think that they have a research clue or idea?
So they can contact me either by Twitter or email. It's probably the best. So tracking down the family, as it sounds, at gmail.com.
Okay.
Or Jennifer_Jones0 on Twitter.
The number.
Yeah, the number. Yeah.
Okay. Well, we'll put links to those in this episode's show notes, and listeners can head over to familyhistoriespodcast.com where they can read those show notes or send us a message. And of course, they can email us with any clues here to help Jennifer on hello@familyhistoriespodcast.com, and we'll pass the message along. Now, as our listeners go off to start searching for Captain James, I've got an idea of how to help you with this one.
Oh, really? Wasn't expecting this.
Yeah, but you're going to need to follow me through to the garage.
Right, okay, I can do that.
Here we are.
What on earth is this?
It's a secret time machine. Sort of.
Sort of?
Ignore Shandor, he's from the 19th century. This is very much a fully functional, highly calibrated scientific time and geospatial displacement engine.
It's a what?
A secret time machine. Now, if you'd like to take a seat over there, then I'd be happy to demonstrate it for you. That's it.
It is safe, isn't it?
Mostly.
Not helping, Shandor. Go on, make yourself useful and start the temporal settings. Right, so where was I? Oh yes, Jennifer. It is perfectly safe. Unless you end up altering time, then, well, who knows what might happen. But aside from that, here's a temporal beacon.
What do I do with that?
Well, when you're ready to come home, just press the button on the top and you'll be back here in a flash.
Okay.
So, when and where would you like to go to try and solve that brick wall of yours?
I'd like you to drop me at the port in Liverpool, England, on the 10th of June in 1832. I know Captain McEwan will be there because he'll be catching his ship out to Australia. So perhaps I can have a quick chat to him before he leaves.
Sounds like a plan. Very nice. Well, let me just get this set. Shandor, if you could just set the...
All done.
Oh, okay. Well, that leaves me with nothing more to say than Jennifer Jones, thank you, goodbye, and good luck. Excellent. That's spot on.
That's a fluke.
Shush it, Shandor. The Family Histories podcast was presented and produced by me, Andrew Martin. My guest was the brilliant Jennifer Jones, with John Spike as Shandor Patofi. If you've enjoyed this episode, then why not join our email list at familyhistoriespodcast.com. Thank you for listening. Approximately no family historians were harmed in the making of this podcast.